도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개방.
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un slammed the annual joint military exercise between South Korea and the United States that kicked off this week, calling it a will to ignite war. His comments come a day after the Korean government vowed to rebuild trust with the North. U.S. President Donald Trump sat down with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy and said Washington will help Europe in providing security for Ukraine. Trump also hinted that he's working to arrange a three-way meeting with Putin and Zelenskyy. Hamas has reportedly agreed to a new ceasefire deal to end the war in Gaza, put forward by Egypt and Qatar. Eyes are now on what the response from Israel will be. We begin with North Korea, where the regime's leaders slammed the annual summertime military exercise between South Korea and the United States that began on Monday. Kim Jong-un also said his regime needs to rapidly expand its nuclear armament. Our Pyongyang starts us off.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accused the United States and South Korea of heightening the risk of conflict through their joint military exercise and stressed that Pyongyang needed to rapidly expand its nuclear armament. His remarks, carried by the KCNA state media on Tuesday, coincided with the start of the annual Ulji Freedom Shield. According to the report, Kim delivered the message while inspecting the Choehyun, North Korea's new 5,000-ton warship at Nampo shipyard. He said the close military coordination between the United States and South Korea, along with their displays of force and nuclear elements, demonstrated a will to provoke war. He added that such actions undermine both peace and the broader security environment in the region. Kim also went on to say that the deteriorating security environment compels North Korea to push for swift, fundamental shifts in its military strategy and to significantly expand its nuclear weapon stockpile. He also pointed to fear as the core of his deterrence strategy, saying the most reliable way to manage and maintain regional security and safeguard national sovereignty was to make enemies afraid of Pyongyang's power. Against this backdrop, Kim emphasized the Navy's role in strengthening North Korea's defense, saying it will soon become a reliable force in the nation's nuclear domain. Photos released by the KCNA show Kim visiting the Situation Room and living quarters on the Choehyun. Kim reportedly instructed that the warship move on to performance evaluations in October. While Pyongyang has long denounced the joint exercise as invasive rehearsals and at times countered with weapon tests, Seoul and Washington maintain the drills are strictly defensive. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Korean government says it aims to rebuild trust across the border, in line with President Lee Jae-myung's toughest message last week towards North Korea. Our Oh Soo-young explains more.
Restoring trust will be Seoul's policy towards North Korea under the Lee Jae-myung administration. On Monday, Unification Ministry spokesperson Koo Byung-sam announced the government will shift its approach, effectively scrapping the so-called unification doctrine of the previous administration. This comes after the president's Liberation Day address last week, where he made three commitments: to respect the North Korean regime, no unification through subjugating the North, and no hostile acts. Spokesperson Koo said this marks a clear departure from former President Yoon Suk-yeol's unification doctrine, which critics say presented subjugation of the North. Unveiled on Liberation Day last year, the now-abolished doctrine called for a unified Republic of Korea by encouraging grassroots calls for freedom and democracy by North Korean citizens. Speaking at a parliamentary committee on foreign affairs and unification, Unification Minister Jong Dong-young on Monday called for trust-building measures through reviving military communication and the 2018 deal on de-escalating border tensions with the North. However, he said inter-Korean dialogue might take time to materialize. At the same committee session, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said E's new dovish policy will be anchored in close coordination with the United States. Pursuing inter-Korean dialogue alongside U.S.-North Korea negotiations, the minister said Seoul and Washington will reaffirm a unified stance on North Korea and create conditions for renewed dialogue. He added Seoul envisions a phased approach to denuclearization, a gradual process of freezing, reducing, then dismantling the North's nuclear program. South Korea will also seek cooperation from China in encouraging denuclearization and regional stability while responding firmly to unilateral actions in the West Sea. With Russia, Seoul will continue dialogue to protect Korean citizens and businesses, but Cho reiterated strong opposition to Moscow's ongoing military cooperation with Pyongyang, calling it a direct security threat. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Over in the United States, President Donald Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House and said Washington will be involved in providing security for Ukraine. The comment came as European leaders traveled to Washington in support of Ukraine and in hopes of a peace deal. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
During a summit with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump said that the U.S. would be involved in ensuring Ukraine's future security.
There'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
The Trump administration has so far avoided deep involvement in the Ukraine war, focusing instead on supplying arms indirectly through NATO. However, Trump's latest remarks, which did not rule out the possibility of U.S. troop deployments, suggest a shift in Washington's security strategy. Trump also reiterated his intention to push for a peace agreement immediately, rather than first seeking a temporary ceasefire. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy stressed that Russia must stop the war, calling for a trilateral meeting between himself, Trump, and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
War, and we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Zelenskyy added that all these sensitive issues, including territorial issues, would be discussed at the highest level in a trilateral summit. In response, President Trump said that he expected a trilateral summit with President Putin and Zelenskyy to take place, calling it a matter of when, not if. Trump also suggested that such a summit could bring an end to Russia's 3-year invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, European and NATO leaders also took part in a meeting with President Trump at the White House on Monday. There, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the much-needed security for Ukraine would be possible after Monday's meeting.
A historic step, actually, could come out of this meeting in terms of security for Ukraine and security in Europe.
Unlike the more tense February meeting, Monday's summit between Trump and Zelenskyy unfolded in a friendlier atmosphere. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Palestinian militant group Hamas has agreed to a new ceasefire proposal put forward by Egypt and Qatar, the mediators in the ongoing Gaza negotiations. According to the AFP on Monday, a senior Hamas official announced on social media that the group has accepted the proposal, while another source confirmed that the group had agreed to the proposal without requesting any changes. The proposal calls for a 60-day ceasefire, and during that period, Hamas would release 10 Israeli hostages, along with 18 bodies, while Israel would free some Palestinian prisoners. According to Times of Israel, Israel has also received the proposal, but is yet to officially respond. The U.S. decision to expand its scope of tariffs on steel and aluminum imports has sparked concerns here in South Korea. And this week, the Lee administration unveiled key details of its economic policy that it plans to achieve over the next 5 years. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Park Min-jung, a professor at the Department of Business Administration at Kumo National Institute of Technology. Professor Park, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So the U.S. recently expanded the range of products subject to steel and aluminum tariffs. Now, this raised concerns about their potential impact on Korean companies. What's your take on this? How should companies prepare for these new measures?
Yeah, the recent expansion of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum products is in the worst for Korean companies, especially those in Korean sectors rely heavily on stable and cost, especially in those in Korean industries such as automotive, shipbuilding, and construction. These sectors actually, as I said, heavily rely on stable and cost-efficient access to these materials, and higher tariffs could drive production costs and reduce competitiveness in global markets. So what Korean firms need to recognize is that this is not one party and one-time policy move. It reflects further protectionist trends in U.S. trade policy. Therefore, companies from now on must adopt a dual strategy. First, diversify export markets and raw material sources to reduce reliance on the U.S. And also, secondly, shift toward higher value-added steel and aluminum products that are less vulnerable to tariff pressures. And additionally, the Korean policymakers should work closely with U.S. counterparts and international trade bodies to negotiate reduced damages or some of the exemptions. So in the long-run perspective, companies that emphasize innovation and energy efficiency and sustainability in their production processes will be best positioned to weather these policy shifts.
Right, and on the domestic economic front, President Lee Jae-myung has pledged to lift South Korea's benchmark KOSPI index to 5,000 points during his 5-year term. How realistic is this goal?
Yeah, recently President Lee's pledge to raise the KOSPI up to 5,000 is highly ambitious and has significant symbolic value for the market. It could serve as a confidence booster for investors, but translating this into reality within only 5-year term will be very challenging. So the KOSPI is not only influenced by only domestic economies and domestic policies, but also influenced by various sectors such as capital flows and geopolitical risks or some of interest rate trends. So to approach this target realistically, now Korea will need to enhance corporate earnings through industrial restructuring and digital transformation and financial market reforms that improve transparency and governance. Attracting more foreign investment will also be critical now, so as it will be the development of future industries like semiconductors or AI and some green technologies. So maybe if these structural reforms are implemented effectively during the President Lee's duration, the index could move closer or up to 5,000 KOSPI mark. However, more realistically, the investors and policymakers alike should view this more as a long-term aspiration, reflecting economic direction rather than a guaranteed short-term outcome. So it is very important to time this on and to focus on the quality and sustainability of growth than to simply chase a numerical target.
I see. And the administration is also seeking ways to develop sectors such as artificial intelligence, aiming to achieve a potential economic growth rate of 3%. What are your thoughts on this target?
The administration's emphasis on AI these days very heavily, related sectors to achieve a potential growth rate of 3% is both timely and strategically important. Korea's economy is facing structural challenges, an aging population, and also stagnant productivity and slowing capital investment, which are very constructive growth. So AI can serve as a transformational driver by enhancing efficiency or automating of complex processes in a lot of industries, enabling advanced manufacturing and opening up entirely new industries in healthcare or finance or some of logistics. But technology alone will not be enough. So to realistically achieve 3% of potential growth, Korea must complement AI adoption with broader ecosystem reforms, including regulatory barriers like a lot of flexibility to encourage innovation and also heavy investment in digital infrastructure and comprehensive education and training programs to build a skilled workforce. Collaboration between government, large corporations, and some startups will be essential to create a robust innovation ecosystem. So the key will be ensuring that productivity gains are shared broadly across industries and not concentrated only in few sectors.
All right, Professor Park, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Lee Jae-myung will discuss the future of the K-pop industry on Arirang's special program K-pop The Next Chapter, which airs on Wednesday. According to the presidential office, President Lee will be joined on the panel by Muggy, writer and director of the Netflix hit K-pop Demon Hunters, and members of the K-pop girl group Twice. They will share ideas on further expanding K-pop's global reach and explore policy directions to support its growth. You can catch the full program this Wednesday at 5 p.m. Korea time. Seoul is adding a new mode of public transport, this time on water. The city's new river ferry system, the Hangang Bus, is set to officially launch this September. Our Park Hyo-bin was on board.
In a city driven by cars, buses, and subways, this one moves differently. No rails, no tires, just water. This is the Hangang Bus, Seoul's new ferry-based public transport, designed to connect key spots along the Hangang River.
This ferry just left Apgujeong and is now heading to Yeouido. The view from here is stunning. You can see the river, bridges, and tall buildings, all in one frame.
Ahead of its official launch in September, the city began offering early test rides for residents to experience the new service firsthand. As the ferry glides across the water, slicing through the breeze with the skyline in full view, smiles spread among passengers on board.
It was really fun riding the Hangang Bus. It made me feel happy.
It's very refreshing. I'd say the view is very good. Excellent.
I've been on ferries abroad, but seeing one as public transport in Seoul is amazing. The view is beautiful. It feels completely different being on the river instead of just looking at it.
Step inside and it feels far from your typical subway or bus. Panoramic windows and ceiling skylights flood the interior with natural light. Nearly 200 seats are paired with foldable tray tables, and there's even a cafe corner where passengers can grab a quick snack or drink. The ferry is scheduled to operate 2 main routes starting in September. The Hangang Bus operates a 75-minute one-way route linking 7 stops from west to eastern Seoul and returns along the same path. For faster travel, a 54-minute express route is also available.
What's more, the ferry runs on a hybrid propulsion system, cutting carbon emissions, and it has passed all required safety tests and certifications. A one-way ticket costs 3,000 won, or about $2 for adults, with transfer discounts available through the city's transit card system. Whether you're commuting, sightseeing, or simply taking a break from the city's rush, the Hangang Bus offers a moment to slow down and see Seoul from a whole new perspective. Park Hoo-bin, Arirang News.
Now let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi-ji. Good morning, Ji.
Good morning, Eun-ji.
So, Ji, starting in Europe, Spain and Portugal continue to battle wildfires. Give us the updates.
Right. Several large wildfires are still burning in Spain and neighboring Portugal amidst a blistering heat wave. The worst wildfires on record in Spain spread to the southern slopes of the Picos de Europa mountains on Monday, and parts of the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage route were closed. Spanish troops are on the front lines with 1,900 soldiers deployed alongside aerial support to assist firefighters. In northwestern Spain, a firefighter died when his truck overturned on a steep forest road on Sunday, adding to 3 earlier fatalities in Spain. Meanwhile, across the border in Portugal, another firefighter was killed in a road accident on the same day, increasing Portugal's fire-related death toll to 2. The fires have burned over 3,444 square kilometers of land in Spain and over 2,160 square kilometers in Portugal as of Monday. These wildfires have been fueled by a 16-day heat wave, which saw temperatures as high as 45 degrees Celsius. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in New Delhi for a 2-day visit, his first in more than 3 years, aimed at improving frozen ties with India. On Monday, Wang Yi held discussions with India's External Affairs Minister, Subramanyam Jaishankar. Jaishankar emphasized the need for a stable border between the two countries to serve as a foundation for stronger bilateral ties. India and China have had a prolonged period of tension following the deadly clash along their Himalayan border in 2020. The two sides also initiated the 24th round of special representatives talks on the boundary issue. Meanwhile, a U.S. trade delegation canceled its planned visit to New Delhi on Monday, citing uncertainty regarding the timeline for concluding a bilateral trade deal. In the United States, cable news channel MSNBC is undergoing a major transformation, announcing it will rebrand as MS Now, short for My Source, News, Opinion, and The World. It will follow the upcoming spin-off from NBC Universal. As part of the rebrand, the network will also no longer use the iconic NBC peacock logo. MS Now's President Rebecca Cutler said that the shift represents a change to chart an independent course separate from the NBC legacy. In Sweden's northern city of Kiruna, the 113-year-old Kiruna church is being transported on rolling platforms to a new location 5 kilometers away. The 2-day journey starting Tuesday is part of a decades-long effort to preserve the town from ground subsidence caused by the expansion of iron ore mining. The city of Kiruna is situated atop the world's largest underground iron ore mine. Along with the 600-ton wooden church building, some 3,000 homes and 6,000 residents are being relocated.
Those of us in the capital woke up to wet roads, and there will be more rain through this morning. Then this afternoon, we could see sudden showers in inland areas with 5 to 40 millimeters in the forecast. Now, the winds will be quite strong as well, especially in the East Coast region, so please stay safe. The rain and showers will bring up the humidity, making it feel quite muggy again. Currently, heat wave alerts remain in place nationwide, with the exception of some parts of Gangwon-do province. However, heat wave warnings continue for the east of Gangwon-do and southern parts of Korea, with an expected high of above 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And Gyeongju will be sweltering hot at 36 degrees this afternoon. Seoul will be getting up to 31 degrees Celsius. Now, it looks like heat wave and tropical nights will continue through the rest of the week and into the weekend, with a chance of rain in the capital area tomorrow morning.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
저는 만 5살에 바이올린을 시작했는데요. 바이올린 소리를 워낙 좋아했어서 그 특유의 따뜻함과 약간 사람의 목소리 같은 목소리를 갖고 있거든요, 바이올린이. 저는 무대에 올랐을 때보다는 이제 혼자 연습할 때 더 큰 희열을 느끼는데, 제가 표현하고자 하는 음악이 잘 나왔을 때 그때 가장 큰 기쁨을 느끼는 것 같아요. 그래서 저만의 색깔을 어떻게 하면 찾아갈 수 있을까, 그걸 제일 많이 고민하는 것 같아요. 아무래도 연습을 할 때는 이제 생각과 고민을 많이 하는 반면에 무대에서 연주할 때는 정말 머릿속을 비우고 아무 생각도 안 하려고 하는 것 같아요. 무대에서는 자유롭게, 콩쿨 무대도 저만의 독주라고 생각하는 자세를 가지려고 하고 있어요. 사실 바이올린과는 거의 제 인생의 대부분을 같이 해왔기 때문에 저를 힘들게 할 때도 많지만 제가 가장 사랑하고 아끼는 존재입니다. 작곡가가 전달하고 싶은 메시지와 또 제 자신이 관객들에게 전달하고 싶은 메시지를 모두 다 설득력 있게 잘 전달할 수 있는 그런 연주자가 되고 싶습니다.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Bringing news just for you. It's Tuesday, August 19th, here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Brooke Prince.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, and also Niles with us.
Good morning.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Tuesday, which means we're going to begin with our keyword news, where we look at a story that has been gaining traction over the past 24 hours. And today's keyword is wage gap. The share of young women earning over 3 million won, or around $2,000 in their first job, was found to be only about 1/3 that of men in South Korea. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, as of May this year, 10.5% of men aged 15 to 29 earned more than 3 million won in their first job. But the proportion of women earning this amount in their first job was only 3.3%. An official from Statistics Korea said the difference was mainly driven by the wage gaps across industries where young men and women tend to find their first jobs. Compared to last year, more men entered scientific and technical services, fields that generally pay higher wages, while more women entered the public administration and social security sectors, which typically offer lower pay. So now, how could policymakers or companies address these disparities for young women entering the workforce, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this, and the first one is the equal pay aspect of it, and then the second being women in male-dominated fields. And when it comes to policy, I think we can strengthen equal pay laws by enforcing transparency in starting salaries, whether it be for male or female employees. And the second factor is probably also the fact that there are just not as many women in these fields to claim the equal pay to start with. So we can start by creating scholarships, internships, and training programs, and actively encourage young women to enter tech, engineering, and science jobs, and provide guidance that challenges gender stereotypes early on in their lives, so young women see broader options and beyond just traditional fields.
So in your personal opinion, do you think it would be more effective to focus on raising wage levels in those industries or the lower paying industries? Or do you think it's better to expand access for young women in these higher paying fields like you mentioned?
I think both. I think that it needs to go hand in hand, obviously, for better quality of life for everyone, but encouraging women to be able to choose whatever they want to in those fields is just key to empowering women.
So what are your thoughts on these?
Well, of course, I think seeing any kind of wage gap is disheartening. I myself have experienced it in this industry. I was cast in something and my male co-star actually got more than me by a factor of 10.
That's crazy.
And it wasn't like he was, a household name or had a bigger role than me. He just told me, well, I said I wouldn't accept it for anything less. And that kind of blew my mind. I think a man saying something like that, they're seen as strong and assertive, but a woman in society might be seen as demanding, bossy, or unreasonable. And so, it inspired me to stand up for myself more. And I think that one of the biggest problems here is also that across industries we don't see similar wages. And as someone in a creative field, it kind of hurts my heart a bit that we're not as respected as more, scientific or technical fields. My dad always had this joke growing up. He would say, Brooke, I'm open in terms of your career. You can be any kind of doctor you want. And, it's a joke, of course, but it reflects a broader view, I think, of those fields being seen as sort of higher than other fields that do attract more women because they're more creative fields. So I would like to see a reduced wage gap in all fields across all industries and empower people to go after their passions.
Yeah.
What you said kind of reminds me of the Taylor Swift song, The Man.
Yeah.
When a man says something, it's assertive, but when a woman, she's kind of, regarded as demanding.
Right, there's like a negative connotation. So I think we gotta fix that.
So the data makes it clear that significant challenges remain for young women entering the workforce, but with more awareness, evolving workplace policies, and increasing opportunities in higher paying industries, the next generation has potential to bridge this gap and create a fairer, hopefully more equal workforce. And that concludes our keyword news for this Tuesday. And as we head into the second day of the work week, we're diving into the trend of studying and working outside the home, a habit that's becoming increasingly popular among millennials and Gen Zs. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
Most of us have probably studied or worked at cafes before. Not only is it a change of scenery, but it's also often easier to concentrate, stay motivated, and even be more productive outside the home or office. However, there has been a growing controversy over people who cross the line by bringing bulky items like printers or desktop computers, taking up space for long periods. In response, a major coffee chain has begun to crack down on these practices, sparking debate among customers, especially millennials and Gen Z, about the role of cafes as work and study spaces. So today on News Generation, we'll take a closer look at this issue, the controversy it sparked, and the conversation around it as we explore what it reveals about the changing culture of work and study.
As we just saw, studying and working at cafes has become a common habit, particularly among millennials and Gen Zs. Many of them see cafes as more than just a place to grab coffee. They view them as a comfortable and convenient alternative to studying at home or in a library. But Starbucks recently announced a new policy that items like desktop computers, printers, and power strips are now prohibited, and any seat left unattended for more than 30 minutes will be cleared. Niall, can you tell us more about this decision, how millennials and Gen Zs are reacting to this new policy?
Right. Many millennials and Gen Z, including myself, were shocked to learn that some people actually do bring their desktops and printers to cafes and leave them unattended for long periods of time. Yes, we live in Korea, but this is a bit much. And I was personally very shocked that, because I've also studied at cafes and worked in cafes as well, but this is obviously those few cases that have seriously crossed some lines. But it is very eye-opening indeed what some people think is okay. And these few cases, they will actually ruin it for the rest of us, because Starbucks, while known to be very generous to their customers when it comes to their policies, it's impacting their business, so they are making changes. And they said, Starbucks is saying that this rule was introduced to increase available seats, and it makes sense for their business. And Starbucks used to be the place to be for 가공족, or in Korean, or cafe studiers. When Starbucks starts to enforce these rules, other cafes will start to follow the big chains and gradually strengthen their own regulations.
But there are, at the same time, actually, cafe chains are actively embracing long-stay customers, seeing as a chance to actually innovate and stand out in this kind of crowded market. So one cafe, for example, has introduced dedicated study zones, while another has launched a smart office. So they basically have bar-style seating with laptop stations, and they also have small group seating. And still another cafe has gone even further and opened a study cafe-style lounge with hourly passes, and they offer a free snack bar. And even there's a budget brand that's famous in Korea, and what they have done is they have set aside designated seating for people that come there to study. So with basically price competition alone proving unsustainable, it looks like these cafes, there's still some cafes that are leaning into the trend and turning to longer stay services as a way to kind of differentiate themselves and attract customers. So it's kind of interesting to see how this trend is evolving. And there are a lot of millennials and Gen Zs as such, and the reason why they're doing this is because there's so many young people using cafes as a place to study study and work. So what's driving this trend in the first place, Brooke?
That's right. It's very interesting to see how things have changed. And let's look at the numbers here. Survey data shows roughly 7 in 10 Gen Z job seekers study in cafes at least once a week. If you take a look at this graphic, you can see the specifics here. So we have 70% of respondents saying that they use a cafe to study once a week or more, while 27% said they go less than once per week, and just 3% said that they never do so, which is quite a small number. And personally, I also studied often in cafes when I was in graduate school because it kind of gave me a chance to get out of the house, right? My first year, it was during COVID, so we had remote classes, and so it was nice once we were allowed to go back to campus to go to cafes and get some sort of human interaction, even if it was indirectly. Plus, when you're at home, it's so easy to lose focus, right? I have a pet at home. I love to play with him. You have your TV at home, your phone. Maybe you've got chores around the house that you need to get done. But at a cafe, you're there for a reason. You have told yourself you're going to go there to study. And if other people around you are also studying, it can inspire you to stay on task. Many young people also cite the pleasant environment as a reason why they study in cafes. You have very comfortable seating. You can order delicious food, drinks. You've got stable Wi-Fi. And one of the most important things during this heat wave, air conditioning. You have the nice, brisk air conditioning so you can study comfortably. And for me, one thing I really like is that steady sort of cafe white noise. You've got people bustling around and chatting. And for me, that helps me to get things done. Other people, it might be different, but some people really like that background noise. And I just think for the MZ generation, cafes feel less rigid, right? If you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the library to study, you already don't want to go. It's like saying, I want to go to the gym to exercise. You'd rather just go on a walk and you happen to get exercise. So if you go to the cafe, it feels like you're doing something hip, trendy, and fun for yourself, and then you happen to study on the side. I think that gives people a lot more incentive.
So as someone who has studied at cafes, like you said, during grad school, do you see businesses like leaning towards this trend or pushing against it?
Well, with all of the things you said about the policies they've enacted and new corners where you can study and things like that, I actually think they are embracing it because they can tell 70% of young people are using cafes for this reason. So you might as well turn it into a business opportunity, right?
But the tension between cafe goers and business owners isn't exactly a new issue, is it? So how has this conflict kind of evolved across time, Niall?
Right. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but the issue isn't just about studying in cafes. Like you mentioned, that they know that people do this, and it's when someone buys that one drink and occupies a large table for hours and hours at a time, or even complains that other customers are being too loud for them to study. And now some cafe owners have responded by restricting the outlet usage for their computers or whatever other gears that they have, and imposing extra charges for stays longer than 2 hours to buy extra drinks, or introducing the study room rentals with stricter seating rules, as Sujin just mentioned. And they made this decision for their business. And in some ways, it may seem harsh to ask somebody to continue to buy drinks, but I think it's all these cases that were too extreme that forced them to do that, and I don't blame them.
So it's clear that the debate over studying or working in cafes isn't going away anytime soon. Some see it as a natural part of modern life, but others argue it places an unfair burden on businesses and disrupts the atmosphere for other customers. So to get a better sense of where people stand on this issue, we conducted a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, what do you think about studying or working at a cafe for a long time? So about 20% of respondents said it's perfectly fine to study or work in cafes, while the majority, 68%, felt it's acceptable only if customers continue to place orders. Meanwhile, 12% believed it ruins the overall atmosphere of the cafe. So since opinions on this topic seem pretty divided, we thought it'd be fun to turn it into a little OX quiz. So we're going to talk about what's acceptable when it comes to using a cafe and what might actually be considered bad etiquette. So I have here 2 paddles, and I'm going to give one to each of you guys.
Thank you.
And so the first question here is it okay to go to cafes to use their power outlets? So Brooke, do you want to go first?
I would say yes, with a caveat. If you are working or studying and your phone runs low or your laptop runs low, I think it's okay to charge it. But the key, and we keep repeating this today, the key is don't go overboard. Do not cross the line. Avoid using too many power strips, multiple chargers, don't block outlets so other people can use them. And of course, if you're going to stay for hours on end, consider buying another drink. You should also make sure that your cables aren't going to trip anyone, and really pack lightly. It shouldn't look like a makeshift office in the middle of a cafe. Just be considerate, that's it.
I think I agree with Brooke. I mean, charging your phone or maybe even your laptop while you're working, some cafes even offer that outlet in certain seats, so they're okay with you doing that. But if you are bringing your desktop and printers and setting up an entire office space there, maybe it's not right to do that.
So I really think it depends on how far you go and how much time you're actually spending there. So the second question I have for both of you is it all right to ask people around you to keep it down? Brooke, again, going on first.
I don't think so. You're going to a cafe, so you have to expect there's going to be some noise. They're not libraries, they're social spaces. And of course, there are exceptions. I myself frequent PC bongs more than cafes, and those are very loud environments. You've got people screaming at their computers sometimes. But even then, you can go too far. I've seen staff intervene if someone is playing their music too loudly or being overly disruptive. And similarly, I think if you're in a cafe and someone is being that loud that it's disrupting the entire place, then yes, you can ask them to keep it down or ask a staff member if you're uncomfortable. But in general, if people are just laughing and having fun, let them. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, I think I agree, but in a certain way. But when they're so loud to a point, maybe beyond how much we're talking right now, the louder than this level, and they're being so loud and disruptive to other people who are there to talk as well, not just to study. I think that's a level when you can ask maybe the cafe owners to intervene a bit. Maybe don't go up to them directly. But when it comes to you studying at a cafe, please just go to the library. And you can't tell other people to be quiet if you're there to study, because you just all have different reasons of being there, and you can't enforce that on somebody else.
Right, like you said, as long as someone's not screaming, and you're there for the lively atmosphere, technically. And if you're there just to study, if you want to concentrate, there's also study cafes in Korea that people can frequent. So, and lastly, what about holding your spot while you step out for a while? Do you think that's okay, or is that also crossing the line?
I would say as an American, I'm still, even after 10 years living here, I'm not comfortable leaving my valuables, even though I know it's Korea, they're probably going to be fine. I feel uncomfortable, and I also feel guilty because technically my stuff is sitting in my seat. That's not a person. And so you are taking up that ability for the owner to get money, essentially. And I actually think we mentioned earlier that there's a policy for 30 minutes, that grace period. That is so generous. Some people just go to a cafe for 30 minutes at all. So if you can leave for 30 minutes, to me that seems like almost too much. I would say keep it brief. If you need to go to the bathroom and come back, that's fine. But if you're going to leave for an hour, you should take your stuff with you and come back later.
What about you? I mean, I think there's a reason why they set it up as 30 minutes. Like you said, it's very gracious. But if it's for a few minutes, you're stepping out, going to the bathroom, you do so, it's fine. But if you're going out for a meal with your friend in the middle and then coming back to resume your work that you've been doing for a few hours prior to that, just maybe place your hand on your heart and ask yourself, did I really pay enough to buy this entire seat for the day? Probably not. So I think there's a discretion that's necessary there.
Like Brooke said, there could be a cultural element at play as well. So to get a more global perspective on this issue, we'll be speaking with someone who's currently working overseas. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Alexandra, a young person who's currently working in the fashion industry in Australia. So hi, Alexandra. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So is it common in Australia for people to study or work in cafes? And what about you personally? Do you also do this?
Yes, we have a very big cafe culture in Australia, particularly the big cities like Melbourne, which is famous for its coffee. We love to bring our laptops, bring some headphones and sit and just work or study for a couple of hours. And it's a very big part of our culture. But there are a few unspoken rules that you should follow if you want to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great to have you back on the show again. My question for you is, are there any conflicts or controversies between cafe owners and customers who use cafes for studying or working in your country, kind of for going against those unspoken rules you mentioned?
Well, yeah, I worked at Starbucks for a couple of years, so I saw a lot of people coming in with their laptops and working for hours on end, and they wouldn't buy more than one drink. So it does tend to teeter into a bit of a rude territory. I agree that if you're going to sit there and stay for a few hours, you should buy more than one drink, maybe some food. But yeah, we haven't really seen anybody bring a big computer or a printer into the cafe. But if they did that, they would definitely get a few funny looks, especially from the owners, because that's not something that's very accepted in cafes.
I think they got a few funny looks here in Korea as well. But in your opinion, what do you think would be a smart way to manage these kinds of conflicts?
Yeah, I think the idea really just comes down to respect. So paying respect to the cafe owners, to the people around you, and also to yourself, because it does reflect poorly on you if you are the only person playing music or sitting there for 5 hours or screaming and talking with friends and not doing any work, or, as you say, leaving for an hour with all of your stuff at the table. This is very disrespectful. So if you make sure that you are quiet, you pay for a couple of drinks or some food, you sit there with just a laptop, just your headphones. If you need to use some power outlets, again, just be polite and ask before you start grabbing things, and then you'll be fine. It doesn't matter if you want to sit there for a few hours. Libraries sometimes don't accept food or drinks, so it might not always be the best option. And so that's why cafes have sort of adapted to that culture here. But you really do have to be nice about it. It is a business after all, and it is a public place. It's not your house. So treat it like that.
That's a good reminder. All right, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
So we just heard from a young person from Australia sharing her perspective on how people there study and work outside the home and how they navigate this cafe kind of culture we see here. And there's also challenges and expectations of public spaces, both in Korea and apparently in Australia as well. So Brooke, how do you think conflicts with people who use cafes as study or workspaces can be resolved? What kinds of solutions could strike a balance between the needs of regular customers, business owners, and those who rely on these spaces for long periods of work or study?
Well, I think it's like you just said, it's about striking a balance. I think Alexandra also put it well. It's about respect. You have to respect each other. It is not your home, but think of it like paying bills for your utility bills, for example. If you're using their electricity, then buying a drink or buying food, that's your way of contributing to what they are going to have to pay for the resources that you are using. It is not for free. And now we see more and more cafes, they are publishing rules like prohibiting bulky office gear, like the printers we kept talking about, limiting, longer stays, and discouraging things like Zoom calls or something where your speakers are going to be really loud, because of course that can disturb people. But I think as customers, we can meet business owners halfway. We can come in with a smaller setup. We can avoid using video calls. We can use our headphones instead, and we can keep ordering if we're planning to stay for a long time. We've mentioned it a few times now. I think owners can offer maybe quieter corners, study places that are specifically designed for people that are looking for kind of a quieter atmosphere, and they should just clearly indicate their policies on the menus and the walls so that everyone knows what to expect. But I would say with 7 in 10 Gen Zers that are using cafes for this purpose, there's no reason to prohibit it entirely. We can still have this. We don't have to ruin nice things, right? We just need to do a little tweaking to make sure that both sides are getting a fair shake.
Just so briefly, do you have any other suggestions?
I think this is a flip on how we think about things, but maybe libraries should have better cafes in their first floors, and people would come and we can bring in young people back to libraries.
Great idea.
And, local governments can make revenues off of this and it'll help as well. But you know what? Overall, coming back to cafes, they need to have clear guidance and really enforce it. And we need to not punish them for enforcing that. And we should all have a mutual understanding of what respect and disrespect is.
So while the rise of cafe workers and students has sparked debate, some worry about long stays or bringing bulky items like printers, cafes and customers are slowly starting to find ways to coexist. So opinions still differ on what should be allowed, but by being mindful of others, keeping setups simple and respecting shared spaces, everyone can enjoy the benefits of these adaptable environments. And in the end, cafes can be places where comfort, productivity, and community come together. But before that happens, it's important to remember that both owners and visitors must consider each other's needs. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. A big thanks to Brooke.
Thank you for having me.
And Niall.
No problem.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.